Hi guys! Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to discuss about the present simple tense, how to use it, when to use it, and also how to use it as a question. We will also learn what mistakes to be careful of when using it, so everything in one video so you can use it correctly and confidently. Are you ready? Let's get started. Today we will talk about the present simple tense. But what is tense anyway? Tense is simply the way we talk about time in English. So what do you mean by time? Time means the past, the present, and the future. These are all different times and we have different tenses to express or talk about those times. So in this lesson, we're gonna look at the two basic ways we can speak about present in English. And they are present simple and present continuous or present progressive, as it's also called. Now, although we're focusing on the present simple, I want to give you a little overview so you understand the basic differences between present simple and present continuous. Let me give you an example. So in present simple, we would say, I work. In present continuous, we would say, I am working. So what's the difference? Is there any difference? In many other languages, there isn't any difference between the way these two ideas are expressed. But in English, there's a difference in the idea and the way you say it. So let me explain what the difference is. When we say I'm working, which is a present continuous, this means that we're talking about something that is happening right now or something temporary. What do I mean by now? Now means at this very moment. Example, I am teaching. As you can see, I am teaching at this moment. You are listening. So these things are happening right now. I am teaching, you are listening. So when I'm saying that, I'm using present continuous. The action is still going on at the time of speaking. But when I say I work, that is general. For example, I may not be working at this moment, but I work somewhere else. I have a job. So when we talk about something that is true in general, that is present simple. Also, present simple is for something that is more or less permanent. Of course, nothing in life is necessarily permanent. We only mean that it lasts all the time. But let's say you're not changing your job every day. So more or less, this is the job that you always have. And this is your permanent job. So then, for those kind of activities, we use present simple. And we can say, I work at a bank. I work as a teacher. I work. But I am working would just be right now. Or it could also be temporary, which means only for a short period of time. So present simple is for always. Present continuous is for a short period of time. Present simple is true in general. Present continuous is true for something happening now. So these are some basic differences between these two tenses. Now, let's focus on our main lesson for today, the present simple tense. So how does this present simple tense actually work? And what does it sound like? Present simple tense looks like this. Subject plus verb. Plural subject plus plural verb. Pronouns I, you, we, they follow the same rule. Repeat after me. I work. You work. We work. They work. Singular subject plus singular verb. Pronouns he, she, and it use the same rule. Repeat after me. He works. She works. It works. See how the verb work changes in singular sentence? But don't worry about that yet. We're gonna come back to that later. But for now, let's look at when to use the present simple tense. Here we have 5 different situations in which we can use this tense. Let's go through them one by one. We can use the present simple tense to talk about things which are permanent or which are more or less always true. For example, they live in Canada. Suppose that this is where they actually live, not just for a short time, but for a long time, or more or less permanent. This is generally or usually true. We can also say, he works at a bank. When we say he works at a bank, this means that this is his permanent, regular job. It's not a temporary job or that is happening now or for a little while. That is where he works permanently. So we use present simple for permanent situations, generally or usually true. Think about yourself. Whenever you're trying to learn a tense, one of the great things you can do is to think of an example that applies to your life or to people you know. What is permanent for you? So you could say a sentence such as, I live in plus the city, whichever city you live in. You could say, I work at. So by making these sentences, you're already using the present simple tense. It's that simple. Another situation that we can use the present simple tense is when we talk about routines. What's a routine? A routine is something that you do regularly. For example, I wake up at 7 a.m. every day. You can remove the word every day. It is still considered present simple tense because it talks about a routine. Another example, I sleep at 11 p.m. This means that I always sleep at 11 p.m. So it's a routine. The verbs wake and sleep are both in present simple tense because they talk about a regular activity, a routine. We can also use this present simple tense to talk about the facts, which are always true. For example, the sun rises in the east. It is just a fact. It is something that's a scientific truth. It is not something that I just decided or someone thought. It's just a fact. You can also say the sun sets in the west. It's a fact. It's always true, and it's been proven. Next, we can use this tense to talk about schedules. Think about it. What's a schedule? A schedule tells us when something is supposed to happen. And it's kind of connected to routines, right? It's a regularly scheduled event. For example, we can say, our class starts at 9 o'clock. Why are we using present simple? Because our class always starts at 9 o'clock, right? So it's kind of permanent, it's kind of a routine, it's a schedule. Or you can say, the bus arrives once every hour. The bus doesn't just arrive at once, but every hour. So it's a schedule. Now let's look at another situation. There are some words in English that describe how often something is happening, and we call them adverbs of frequency. These are never, rarely, sometimes, often, and always. Let's look at our example. She always takes a bus. So always is a word that tells us how often something happens. How often does she take a bus? Always. All of these words are just like that. If always is 100% of the time, we have the other word never, which means 0%. It never happens at all. So we can say, she never takes a bus. Let's say 50% of the time she takes a bus. So we say, she sometimes takes a bus. Or once in a while, she takes a bus. We say, she rarely takes a bus. Or maybe often. She often takes a bus. So when you see one of these words, which are called adverbs of frequency, that also tells you that you should be using the present simple tense along with the other situations. If it's permanent, a routine, a fact, or a schedule. If you want to learn it really well, apply it to yourself. Say something about your routine, what you always do and what you never do. By doing that, you're already using the present simple tense. Now let's move on to how the present tense is formed. So I have 3 sections here. One section for positive sentences, another one for negative sentences, and the last one for questions. Let's focus first on the positive sentence. There's a major rule that we follow in English. A verb or an action word must always agree with the subject of the sentence. So how does it work? When the subject is singular, which means only one, we use singular verb. Plural subjects, which means 2 or more, use plural verbs. For example, repeat after me. I work as a teacher. Michael works as a teacher. Notice that the verbs we use in our sentences have different forms, work and works. Remember that pronouns I, you, we, they use the plural verbs, or the base form of the verb. Repeat after me. I work. You work. We work. They work. Any subjects that are considered two or more follow the same rule. For example, Jay and Mark drink coffee in the morning. Children play after school. Now, if the subject is singular, we add s or es to the verb. For example, Jay works. Jay plays. Jay teaches. Pronouns he, she, and it also follow the same rule. Repeat after me. He works. She works. It works. He teaches. She teaches. It teaches. Let's look at how we change the spelling of singular verbs for present simple. For most verbs, all you need to do is to add that s. Repeat after me. Run, runs. Read, reads. Wake, wakes. Now, if the verb ends in s, or sh, or ch, or x, then we need to add es. For example, kiss, kisses. Wash, washes. Teach, teaches. Fix, fixes. So that's another change. Another one is verbs ending in consonant and y. So what do you mean by that? Just look at the verb study. Study ends with y, and before y, there is a consonant. So what's a consonant? Any letters in the alphabet that isn't a vowel is a consonant. A vowel in English is a, e, I, o, or u. Everything else such as B, C, D, F, G, etc., these are all consonants. So D in the word study is a consonant. So here in the word try, we have a Y, and before that is a consonant, R. So what happens in those cases? We need to drop the last Y, and we need to add I-ES. So study becomes studies. Try becomes tries. Fly, flies. Fry, fries. So these are the most common patterns, but there are a few verbs which ending might be different in one way or another. Sometimes the verb really changes and you have to pay attention to that. They are usually irregular verbs. You may be familiar with many of these already, but here are a few examples. Go becomes goes. Like I go, she goes. Do becomes does. Like they do, he does. And have becomes has. Like we have, it has. So you see that some cases the verb changed completely. And what you need to do is to remember and be familiar with them. So these are the most common patterns for spelling changes in the present simple tense. For singular subject, we use singular verb. Either we add s, es, or ies. It depends on the verb. Now we're done with the positive or affirmative sentence. Let's move forward to the negative sentence. So here we will use do plus not or don't for plural subjects, and for pronouns I, you, we, and they. But as I always say, use the contraction form don't to make it sound more natural, unless you want to emphasize your answer. Let's memorize this pattern. Plural subjects or pronouns I, you, we, they, plus don't, plus the base form of the verb. Repeat after me. I don't work. You don't work. We don't work. They don't work. Jay and Mark don't work. For singular subjects and pronouns he, she, and it, we will use doesn't. Subject plus doesn't plus the base form of the verb. Repeat after me. He doesn't work. She doesn't work. It doesn't work. Jay doesn't work. Notice here that we don't need to add s or es to the verb of singular subjects. In negative sentence, we will only use the base form for both plural subjects and singular subjects. Don't forget to use don't plus the base form of the verb for plural subjects. And for the pronouns I, you, we, and they. And we use doesn't plus the base form of the verb for singular subjects and pronouns he, she, and it. Now let's move on to the questions. So what happens in the question? In the question, we will also use the helping words do and does, and we will change the order. So for plural subjects, we will use this pattern. Do plus the plural subjects or pronouns I, you, we, they, plus the base form of the verb. Repeat after me. Do I work? Do you work? Do they work? Do we work? Another example. Do you work at a bank? Or do they drink coffee? Now for singular subjects, we use this pattern. Does plus singular subjects and pronouns he, she, and it plus the base form of the verb. Repeat after me. Does she work? Does he work? Does it work? Does she work on Fridays? Does he drink coffee? Another important point is that sometimes when we ask questions, we use the WH questions or question words such as what, where, when, why, how much, how often, and many more. When using these question words, we will just follow this pattern. Question words plus the question pattern. Question words plus do or does plus the base form of the verb. To make it easier to understand, just put these question words before the question pattern. For example, where do you live? What do you do? Don't worry if you have different kinds of question words that you want to use. Just put them before the question pattern. So this is how we form the present simple tense in positive sentences, negative sentences, and questions. But the most important thing to remember is the part where we change the verb for singular subjects. In positive sentence, we add s or es or ies to make a singular verb. As you can see, this is the only part in the chart that we need to change the verb. Everything else we use the base form of the verb. Always remember the patterns and just practice this tense, get familiar with the verbs, and you will perfect it. Now that we've learned how to make questions in present simple, let's look at how we give short answers in English. So in real conversation, when someone asks you a question, we don't really repeat the whole question in our answer. We just give what is called a short answer. Let me give you an example. If someone asks, do they need help? You can just answer, yes they do, or no they don't. You don't have to say, yes they need help. You don't need to repeat the whole question in your answer. Just give a short answer. Yes they do, no they don't. So how do you shorten your answer? It's easy. If the question starts with do, like, do they need help? Then your answer will include some form of do or don't, depending if your answer is a positive, yes they do, or a negative one, no they don't. So take note that we're using yes or no questions here. So when answering this question, we put yes if it's a positive, plus the subject, so we're talking about they, plus do. Yes they do. For negative answer, we change yes to no and do to don't. No they don't. Another example, does he speak Spanish? So it started with the word does, and our options are yes, he, since we're talking about he is our subject, does. Yes, he does. No, he doesn't. So from these examples, you can easily answer any questions that someone asks you in present simple. You just need to listen carefully. However, you also need to pay attention to the subject here. Let's look at this example. Do you like coffee? In this question, the subject is you. This means that the question is directed to you. You don't say, yes, you do. You say, yes, I do. No, I don't. So you see the same principle applied all the way. These short answers are used a lot in normal conversation. So it's a good idea to practice them now and get used to using them. So do you understand? You can say, yes, I do. And I hope that's what you said. Now that you've learned a lot about the present simple tense, it's time to practice. Let's get started.
Number 1. What would you say in present simple? I take, he, blank. I take, he takes. Very good. We just need to add the letter S in take because our subject is he, which is singular. Number 2. They go, she. What's the singular verb of go? She goes. Very good. Go is an irregular verb that we need to remember. They go, she goes. Number 3. Now let's do it the other way. She enjoys, they, blank. Since our subject is they, which is plural, we need to use the base form. What's the base form of enjoys? They enjoy. Very good. She enjoys, they enjoy. Number 4. Now let's make the sentence into a negative one. They study, they. Since our subject is they, we need to use what? Don't. Just use the contraction. Don't plus the base form, which is study. They don't study. Don't being short for what? Do not. Right, you got it. Number 5. He sings, he blank. Make it into a negative. He is our subject, so which one do we need to use? Don't or doesn't? He doesn't plus the base form. He doesn't sing. He sings, he doesn't sing. Doesn't is short for what? Does not. You're doing great. Very good. He sings, he doesn't sing. Number 6. Now let's make some questions. Let's read the sentence first. He wants to buy a new car. How would we ask a question? Which helping word do you need to use? Do or does? Since the subject is he, we will use does. Does he? Then the verb in the base form. Want to buy a new car? Does he want to buy a new car? And for number 7, they sell books online. What is our subject? Here, the subject is they. So we will use do. Do they sell books online? Do they sell books online? Now, let's look at some common mistakes that the learners or students often make when they start using the present simple tense. In this way, you will know what to be careful of so that you don't make these kinds of mistakes. Alright, so let's look. So usually, the mistakes are of 4 different kinds. Sometimes the mistake is in the tense itself. So remember, we mentioned at the beginning the present simple and present continuous, and that the present simple is for something permanent and present continuous is for something temporary. So sometimes learners get mixed up between these two tenses. So let's say in this example, I am living in Tokyo. Let's say that this person lives in Tokyo, right? So it's not just for a little while, it's where the person lives. So if the person said, I am living in Tokyo, that would be wrong. If that's where the person stays permanently, he or she should say, I live in Tokyo. I live. They could say, I'm living in Tokyo only if it's something temporary, alright? So that is one of the mistakes that's sometimes made with the present simple. That confusion between this present simple and present continuous. Now let's look at another kind of mistake. This mistake is made with a verb form. Let's read the example. We likes to travel. So the verb here is likes and the subject is we. So what's the mistake? The mistake here is that the verb likes doesn't agree with the subject we. So instead of saying we likes to travel, we will change the verb likes into like. We like to travel. Another example, they doesn't drink coffee. Here we have the same mistakes in the verb form, but in a negative sentence. They doesn't drink coffee is wrong and you know that. So what should it be? They don't drink coffee. Because the subject is they, we always use the helping word do. Repeat after me. They don't drink coffee. They don't. And here's a mistake in the question. Does you work at the bank? Does you work at the bank? So that's wrong. We can't say that. What do we need to say instead? Do you work at the bank? So the pronoun you, like they, use the helping word do. Do you? Repeat after me. Do you work at the bank? Alright, so those are the common mistakes in the verb form. Another common mistakes when using the present simple is in spelling. We looked at the many kinds of spelling when changing singular verbs, right? So here the person wrote, she tries to save money. The intention of changing the verb try to make it singular is right. However, the spelling is incorrect. So what do we do when the verb ends with a consonant and y? We drop the y and add ies. Here the verb is try and it ends with a y and a consonant before that. So we can change it to tries. Repeat after me. She tries to save money. She tries. Next, sometimes an entire word is missing. So let's look at this one. This is a question. What time you go to work? What time you go to work? It almost sounds right, but it's not. It's wrong. It's grammatically wrong in English. Can you understand it? Yes, I can understand it. You can understand it, but it's still wrong. So how do we correct it? Did you find a mistake? So what is missing? The helping word do. Why do? Because here the subject is you. So we should say, what time do you go to work? Remember the pattern in making questions? And these question words will be added before the question pattern. Repeat after me. What time do you go to work? Very good. So these are the 4 common mistakes that you have to be careful of. Using the wrong tense, using the wrong verb form, making any kind of spelling mistakes, or leaving out an essential verb or helping word.
So that's all for today, guys. I hope you've learned a lot about present simple tense, how to use it, when to use it, and how to use it as a question. Start using it now so you'll get familiar with it. Thank you for watching. See you in my next video. Bye!